Welcome back, everyone. This is the first session of our login page design, and as you can see, I have renamed my folder to mini project 1, and I have the codes here so that we can start working on that project. Well, usually in a perfect world, imagine you're working in a company and someone wants you to design let's say this exact login page. Well, what happens is usually companies have UI UX designer, where UI UX designer designs something, whether it's usually on Figma or Adobe XD, usually these two applications, and you will be received something, and we'll take a look at that thing, and we start by that. For example, let's search free login page on Figma, and as you can see, there's something here, and as we can see, we can take a look at all these Figmas. So for example, we can choose anyone, but for example, let's choose this one here, okay? This is the login page that we are going to design. Okay, let's get back to our codes here. So as I told you, we need to have the doc type HTML and head, body, section every time. So if we're going to write that every single time, it becomes a bit annoying. So we have a shortcut for that. When you write HTML in VS Code, there's on second option, there's HTML5, which it creates a structure for us. For now, we know everything on this code except these three meta tags. Let's clean them for now. We will talk about meta tags in future, but for now we do not know what are them, so I just clean them for the moment. So on title, I need to have a login page. Okay, this is our login page, and in body I will have the structure that I need. So if we get back to here, as you can see, there's a login here, welcome back, login, and everything has been written with a different style. Let's learn new tags even. As you can see, for something, I want to learn two new tags. First of all, H1 tag. H1 is used for titles, okay? H1 means we have, H1 is our most important title. H2 is important, but second we have H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6. These are only 6 tags. They are very similar. They are used for headings, and each heading which is more important is H1 or H2. Even search engines care about H1 and H2 tag very much. So let's get back to our codes here. Where is our codes? So let's have a H2 tag here. Okay, H2 tag here for our login here. We have to have this. With HTML, we create the structure, the text that we need. Then we start to use CSS in order to paint this. Okay, that's the best way to say it. Style this. Login here. We have login here, and welcome back. Welcome back. We can use a span tag, but I want to use p tag. P tag is used in order to write paragraph. But what is the difference between a p tag and a span tag? I'll cover that in this session. Just wait a bit. So we have that welcome back here. If we save our code and open the file, as you can see, we can see that login here and welcome back here. I can go ahead and type everything. But for now, we first need to learn how to position our text, how to control the position. For example, look at this login here. It's up there. We need to change the position of this. We need to create a division here for our main content here, and there's another thing here. So first we need to learn how to create divisions and so many things. But before anything, we need to become familiar with something called display. And what is display? In fact, let's check something. Let's have two p tags here. Sorry, let's get back to it. Let's have two p tags here, test 1, and I can have this p tag also here for test 2, and I copy all of these and I hit and instead of p I just use a span. Okay, let's get back here. And if you wonder how did I do this, you can highlight something and press Ctrl D, and it highlights the same thing as it hovers, so you can type multiple places. Okay, or you can use alt click in VS Code. As you can see now I have two cursors. So now we have test 1, test 2 here, and test 1, test 2 here. Let's get back to Google Chrome and hit refresh. There's something that I want to notice here. Let's zoom a bit more for you. And as you can see, this test 1 and test 2 are below each other, but these two are beside each other. So while browser is rendering our code, we can see browser behaves differently with p tag and span tag. Both the span tag and p tags are used to write text with no style. By no style I mean not italic or not bold, but they have a difference in their display. In CSS, we said we have so many properties like color, like font size, like background color, so many things. But let's learn a new CSS property, and that's called display. Some elements, for example, look at this. These elements have color black by default. So elements could have default properties, okay? But some tags have block display by default, and some tags have inline display, and some tags have different displays, which we will cover in next sessions. But for now, we need to understand the difference between block display and inline displays. As you can see, this test 1 and test 2 are p tag, and p tag has a block display by default. So that's why browser is displaying them like this. But spans have inline display. That's why they are positioned beside each other. In fact, if I right click on this and hit click on this inspect, this inspect tool is something that we are going to use so often in this course, and in fact every programmer uses this a lot. If your inspect element tool is not positioned this down, for example, the first thing you can dock to right or dock to bottom. I prefer to have this dock on bottom. So as you can see, when I hover on this span, you can see a white space, a blue space there, which shows us how much space this element has occupied. When I hover on this test, you can see the blue area, which means this p tag has occupied 100% of its parent div. Its parent, what is its parent div? Its body, and this is our body, which is a block. Body is also a block element, so block elements occupy 100%. So in fact, from the very left to the very right. So since this is our body and our p tag, which is inside body, it occupies 100% of its parent. So that is the difference between a inline display and a block display. But you might ask, what is that orange area when I hover the elements? Well, that's called margin. Some elements have a default margin by default. For example, look at this h2 tag. When I click on this h2 tag, you can see it has some properties here. Let's zoom here so you can see better and have this here. And as you can see, h2 tag has some margins here, some styles by default. As you can see, the display is block, font size in 1.5 em. Em is a different unit from pixel, but You don't need to be worried about EM and pixel for now. We will cover different types of units in future, but you might guess that's what the 1.5 EM looks like. And if we go to P tag, as you can see, the display is block, and it has no font size, which when something does not have any font size, it uses the default font size of the browser. So 1.5 EM basically means 1.5 times bigger than the default font, which means this is 1.5 times bigger than this. But it is bold by default, H1, H2, H3, and H4. So these are called margins. So I can go in my codes and hit style, go to a style tag here, and select H1. I can select multiple tags by putting comma between my selectors. H1 and P, I can click and let's get back to our codes without doing something. I forgot to tell you something. Here, when I inspect element on this span, you can see it has no margin by default. Okay, let's get back to our codes. Let's put margin on 0. So basically, I'm overriding what browser has in mind for H1 and P tag. As you can see, H1 and P tag are given a margin by default. Also, even body, as you can see, the body has been given a margin by default. So even body, let's select even body. I put the margin of all of them to 0. I hit refresh here, and as you can see, now body H2, I wrote H1 here. H2, H1, everything has no margin. So as you can see, everything has no margin here. So some elements have default behaviors, and we can override them using CSS. Okay, so that's enough for this session. So, and let's get back to our PowerPoint and sum up what we learned in this session. So the first thing that I wanted you to know in this session is that in a perfect world, front-end developers receive the design from UI UX designer. That's because the developer should not waste on time about okay, where this input should be, where this tag should be, what the color of the tag should be, what font size should we use. Let's leave those decisions by someone else, which and that person is a UI UX designer. We get the result, the outcome, everything has been determined, font size, color, position, everything, and we just develop what we've been given, and this is very much better way to design web pages. And take a look at this. I used in a perfect world because so many companies are in a hurry because, oh, okay, a customer ordered this, we want this by tomorrow. Hey, developer, do something. That's why I used in a perfect world. Usually that doesn't happen. We do not receive everything from UI UX designers. But anyway, let's get back to our PowerPoint here. So the other thing that I wanted you to know is that the height of the elements will be determined automatically. By automatically I mean how much content do we have in that. But the width of the elements are determined by its display. For example, display block, we saw display inline. What does it do? Let's get back to here. For example, let's right here, inspect here, and change this for let's paste something here. Just paste. I want to create a big content here, and as you can see, since I have a big content, the height of my element has been determined by the content that it has. But the width of the elements are determined by the display. For example, right click on it, inspect. As you can see, this P tag has 100% of its container width. But this span tag have width as much as the text is inside it. So that's why I say that. So let's get back to so in this session, another thing that I wanted you to understand the difference between block and inline display, and you need to know that some elements have block display by default and some of them have inline display. Let's know the difference between block and inline. We said that it has 100%, but it contains as much as text. Another difference that we didn't take a look in this session is that margins work fine with block elements, but margin top and bottom do not work for inline elements. For example, let's take a look at these codes. When I right click here, inspect element, this is a p tag. Okay, when I say margin, when we say margin, for example, margin 10 pixel, the margin will be applied in all directions, as you can see. But if I say margin top, the margin only will be applied from top. As you can see, the margin is only applied from top. But for inline elements, when I say, let's say margin left, for example, we have margin right, margin top, margin bottom, margin left. 10 pixel, okay, as we can see, the margin left applied very well. But when I use margin top, okay, instead of margin left, okay, you can see the margin top did not apply. I can remember that once one of my friends were working with CSS and he was very mad and he was shouting, I hate CSS, I hate CSS. And I take a look at what's the problem. And he said, look at this. I said margin top 10 pixel and it does nothing. It does nothing. I hate CSS. And I take a look at this guy and said, well, it has inline display, and when it has inline display, margin top and margin bottom is meaningless for that tag. And always, it's usually these small facts, these small things is the difference between senior developers and junior developers. So and let's introduce some tags which they have block display by default and some tags that have inline display by default. And from if we go on, we see that each tag has which display by default. And if we never know it has which display, we just can right click and inspect and see that display in properties here. And as you can see, this inspect element tool is something that we can change and customize the thing without going to the codes, but it's just temporarily. For example, as you can see, I gave a margin top to this p tag, okay, but it's temporarily. When I hit refresh, they all go away. This inspect element changes are temporary. So that's it for this session.